Welcome back, everybody, to Nuts and Bolts Sports. I am Raj. That's Jordan. I pointed the wrong way again. I had it last time. I didn't get it this time, but that's okay. We are here talking about the NBA's return in the bubble. This is episode 6. We've got a lot to talk about. We thought within the 2-day span there wouldn't be a whole lot of news and whatnot, and there wasn't a lot of big news. There are a couple things that we're definitely going to get into on the news side, but let's kind of start with what's on top of every single person's mind, and that's that Damian Lillard continues to light up the entire league, light up NBA Twitter, light up everything. He's just insane. I am absolutely astounded by what he's doing. Having coming off those 2 misses and the big spat with the Clippers, he cleared the air with Paul George now, dropped the 51, and we're like, what's he going to do next? Then he goes out and drops 61 points on the Mavericks last night, pushing Portland into the 8th seed. And, that was a massive victory for Portland because they were on the brink of losing that game. And if they had lost that game, it would have been actually very tough for them to sneak into the 8th or 9th seed and really secure the playoff seeding because they would have been in such a tight battle with those other teams that are there. But this is just Dame doing Dame things, and I don't think there's much more to say about it than that. It was insane watching him hit shots that were hitting the back of the rim, flying up 10 feet in the air and dropping in. And I mean, that was, I think I saw you tweeted out that was possibly the game of the season. And I would definitely put it up there in the top 5 games of the season. No doubt. Probably the funnest fourth quarter of the entire season. He was just incredible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're spot on there. And that was just the whole fourth quarter, and not to discount Luka and some of the other guys who were also making shots. It was just Dame was just that much better than everybody else.
Yeah.
You're hot when you get those kind of rolls, like you said, where the ball goes up, 10 feet in the air and it just drops down like it barely touches the net. He was just feeling it. And, just for anybody, whether, they play the Lakers, whether they get into, they're right now they're in the pole position for the 8th seed, with whoever they play for the playing game. Just know that it's not your fault that Paul George and the Clippers they did this. They started this. Dame could say that Dame cleared the air with Paul George and blah blah. It doesn't matter. Dame takes everything personally, which I like. I love that he's not the friendliest guy with everybody in the league. You don't have to be buddy with these guys, and he just has a way of channeling anything, and that's what you see a lot of those big time performers. I mean, obviously he's not quite at the level of MJ, Kobe, and some others, but in terms of the mental capacity of taking things personally, I'll use anything I need as motivation to go out there and kill the other team. Mm-hmm. I think he's got that kind of mentality. Yeah. And I think the crazy thing too is he's not just out there chucking.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, obviously, some shots, the one he hit where it bounced up in the air, that was end of the shot clock. He takes a bunch of those to bail Portland out. He doesn't just willingly do it. But you score 51 points and then 61, and you shoot 57 and then 53% from the field in both games. Not to mention 33 or 34 at the line. Just overall, just phenomenal efficiency. Yeah. And I can't wait for his next game. I'm ready to go. I want to see how many. I know I feel it's probably not going to be 61. That would have been the peak for what we're going to see in the bubble. But I think it could still be a cool 45. There's still so much left in the tank, and obviously, as we keep reiterating, every game is important for those guys in Portland. So Dame's ready to go.
Yeah, that you literally stole right off my note sheet. That's right in front of me. I had the shooting, I had chucking literally on my note sheet written verbatim, and then I had the 33 of 34 from the line also. And yeah, that's just him showing up after the 2 big missed free throws and him locking in mentally and being I'm not missing more free throws. And for him to go that good, after blowing it in that Clippers game, really, he did blow it. It's just astounding for him to come back and bounce back in such an incredible way. And now, it does kind of set the stage for the seeding game to look like it could potentially be, the two hottest guys in the bubble outside of TJ Warren, Devin Booker versus Damian Lillard, 2 all-star guards, 2 guys that are locked in, 2 guys that are more motivated than anybody to secure that playoff seeding. I think I'm just as excited for these play-in games if Phoenix is able to sneak into that 9 seed, more than I am for any other game possibly in the entire playoffs, because that could go all 3 games as well, and just could go down to the wire each of those games, as good as Phoenix has been. Any sort of insight into that matchup from your end as a Lakers fan? Any sort of preferential voting there? Because if Phoenix goes into the LA series, if they do secure the 8th seed and they do sneak into the playoffs, and they're 9-1 or something like that, or 10-1, or they go completely undefeated, like that could be just as scary as a hot Damian Lillard.
Yeah, for sure. If I had to rank them, like I would probably rank in terms of the teams that would be best suited to play against LA right now, would be Portland 1, Phoenix 2. Even with Jaren Jackson out, probably still Memphis 3, just because Josh is such an explosive guard that I think LA would have trouble covering. And as much as I like, San Antonio and Pop, especially with Aldridge being out, I just can't see a world where they have the size to handle LeBron or Anthony Davis. But back to the first two, which are probably the most important, like you said, if Phoenix is able to sweep the bubble and these 8 playing games go in, they just have all the momentum and confidence, which is scary. It's not just one guy. I think, Dame has a ton of confidence every night. Not that some of those other guys from Portland don't, but he's the one that's firing on all cylinders right now. Whereas it seems like everybody in Phoenix is rolling, whether it's, Booker, Ayton, Rubio, Bridges, Cam Johnson, to have that confidence as a team going in, I think, like you said, is just as scary. And would be, I feel like everyone's kind of overblown it. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm terrified that Portland will come in upset or Phoenix will, but they're going to make LA work a lot harder than I think we would have thought before the bubble or even at the beginning of the bubble, which, that wears on you as you got to go face potentially Houston or Oklahoma City in the second round. And then you could have the heavyweight with the Clippers. So they might, they could be a little worn down going into those later rounds if they do survive.
Yeah, that's the key here also is, we shouldn't go so over the top. Not that a team like Portland that is led by a hot Damian Lillard doesn't have the potential to be the Lakers, but I don't think that's, I don't think a lot of us would not put money on that happening. They're still playoff LeBron. Anthony Davis is still, he's been a little inconsistent, but he's going to show up in the playoffs. We just know that he's going to be good when he's completely locked in. So I don't necessarily see either of those teams beating the Lakers. But yeah, if they push that to 6 games, this was a point that we made on the association podcast. I believe it was actually this past week's episode, which will be dropping today, that the West, although, there's 8 teams and you could be matched up 1 to 8, those down to the 10 seed in the West, those teams could all fight for top 4 seed potential probably in the Eastern Conference. If you look at the matchups and whatnot throughout the season, if you have a team like San Antonio facing an easier schedule in the Eastern Conference, they could have even been just right up there with some of those better teams in the Eastern Conference. And I think that's just a testament to how good the West is. And when you're having those difficult matchups early in the playoffs in the Western Conference, and then second round you're playing a team like a Houston, and then then the conference finals you're facing maybe a Denver or a Clippers team, that's an exhausting route to the finals. And let's say you get by all that, and then you have to face a Milwaukee or a Toronto team that have probably played maybe somewhere between 12 to 15 games in the entire Eastern Conference playoffs. I could see Milwaukee sweeping their way all to the conference finals, Toronto possibly the same. That spells All right, did we lose Jordan? I think we might have lost Jordan. Let me see if I can get him back here real quick. Okay. All right, sorry. I think I'm having a storm here. I don't know if you're dealing with anything there, but we might have had a quick power outage. But did you catch the end of what I said?
You said about it being just a really tough road, and you said, you see the East teams being probably definitely more fresh than whoever comes out of the East or out of the West, excuse me. Yes, which correct. For even if Clippers, Lakers, it's an exhausting route. So.
Yeah, that was basically the end of my point. Was that if you have to deal with one of those teams having braved that route all the way into the finals, that could spell major issues for the Los Angeles Lakers. And apologies because like I said, it's storming outside. This is the 3rd time that's happened on live stream, but I will push through. No worries. But yeah, do you have any sort of closing thoughts on this topic?
No, I think we touched on it. That storm is probably just Lillard extending his reach out. He heard you saying, "Hey, well, it's still the Lakers," and he's like, "No." He's taking everything personally. So I'm sure we're going to talk about Lillard here in the next subject as well. So we'll save more thoughts for that.
Sure, let's get into it then. And so that's kind of building off of that. The NBA announced, I believe it was yesterday, that they're going to do like an all seeding game team and an best player and MVP of the seeding games. I'm just calling it the all bubble team because that's just much easier than saying all seeding game team. That's so clunky. But we've talked so much about these guys who have shown up here in the bubble, and what's so fun about this, I guess, is that players that wouldn't maybe get the recognition throughout the regular season are getting a bit of a spotlight here. Booker was an all-star, but he's not going to show up on any of the all NBA teams. But he's going to show up on a team like this, and then you have guys like TJ Warren, which we've already discussed. So and Dame, obviously doing Dame things is just ridiculous. But I guess like my question to you is, are the locks for this team like? I would assume that the locks would be, for me personally, they're Dame, Booker, and TJ Warren. Those are my three locks. Would you agree with those three guys being part of the all bubble team?
I would agree with those guys. And the only other guy that I would definitely add as a lock too is Luka. I feel like some of the games that they've lost, he's been overshadowed by like Dame's 61 point performance and like some other people. But he also had some of those, like he had the big game against Milwaukee, and overall his numbers have been, very, very good. And he's just as hot as anybody. We just have had some other more, I don't know what the word is, like not that Luka's not flashy, but like Dame's the one pulling from like 35 feet. So like he's got a little more like ESPN worthy performances that you're really going to talk about as opposed to Luka. So I would think he's a lock there. That fifth spot, like we kind of were talking about before we came on, like, are they going to do like 2 guards, 2 forwards, 2 centers? Or they just
that's what I assume. Yeah,
that's what I would think.
I would assume that they're going to go similar to the All NBA round. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I went about doing this. But like, it does become hard because then, you are slotting Luka at a forward, even though he's typically playing point guard, but he can sort of fit in the forward position, and that's
sue me. Sorry.
I mean, that's what we did with our All NBA teams too. So I'm perfectly happy taking those liberties here. But I agree with you in that Luka probably being the fourth guy here, and just as much a lock, I think, as any of these other guys, because you said it best that while he's not necessarily flashy, the numbers are still very much there, and he can get flashy. The under the legs pass and whatnot. He can get flashy when he really wants to be, and like for him again, I think it was Stan Van Gundy on the broadcast yesterday in the Portland game that said it about Dallas, which is so crucial about what this Dallas team is doing right now in the games that they're playing, is that it's putting this young core that have not been in the playoffs in a playoff like atmosphere where they are jostling for position and they are fighting a Portland team that are trying to sneak into the playoffs. A Portland team that has been in the playoffs multiple times, and Damian Lillard, who is a very experienced postseason player. It's putting them in that sort of position. I think that's actually been pretty crucial. And what's most important about that is that Luka and Kristaps had like 36 points yesterday. And although he was a complete dud on the defensive end, he's always there on offense. And for those two guys who don't have a lot of playoff experience or any playoff experience, for them to show up in that situation has been crucial. And Luka has definitely led the charge for that Mavericks team in a pretty incredible way here in the bubble. So I definitely agree with that. If we are going the center route, who do you think would be your center?
It's tough because like I was trying to look up some guys before we came on, and nobody's been like, none have been like consistent through their first 6 or 7 games. Like Ayton started out pretty hot, but then he's kind of cooled off. Plus he missed the first chunk of the game the other day with the missed test. Embiid, same thing, and then he's been having the injury issues. So probably if you had to pick like anybody, I'd probably lean towards Jokic if I had to pick a center. Just because at the end of the day, he's, putting up similar numbers to his season stats and just kind of helping them through this, while they're trying to incorporate Michael Porter Jr. and Bol, like they're giving Jokic a bigger role. Like we saw it, more at the beginning of the bubble where he was doing some of the point guard stuff and like, things outside of his normal duties. But he just seems to kind of handle everything that's thrown at him. And he's fun to watch. And he's a big part of the reason why they're the 3 seed right now.
Yeah, I like the Jokic pick, and I think that what's going back again to this whole flashy thing, this is another conversation that you and I have had, that Jokic has just been consistent, and that's something that he struggled with. And when there's like long breaks, especially like we saw at the beginning of this season, where we thought he would come into the season fit and ready to go because of international play over the summer, and he came into the season in worse shape than he had ever been, and then it took him a sort of month to adjust, and then this in this break he decided to slim down. He looks like he has been good in that sort sort of that whatever he did to his body has been good for him coming into this after the break, because he has still put up his 20 and 9 and 6 or whatever it may be. And while he's not playing down the stretch, and while he's not as flashy as a guy like a Dame or a Luka even, he is very much still the crucial piece to that Nuggets team alongside Michael Porter Jr., who we can talk about a couple other guys in just a second. I would love to put Jokic here, and I think Jokic is definitely deserving. But I did go with Nurkic for my personal picks, just because I think for him to come off the major injury that kept him out for over an entire year, for him to show up at the beginning of the bubble and really, really help anchor that Portland team, both on the offensive and defensive end. I think that's just been so crucial for that Portland team on top of Dame's play. We found out CJ McCollum has like a lower back fracture or whatever last night too, which is crazy. And for Nurkic to really hold down the fort, because Nurkic, I think, has been the second best player on that Portland team all around throughout these 8 games or 7 games that they've played so far. So I just wanted to give him a bit of a shout out. But yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, Michael Porter Jr., are there any other guys that you might want to give a little bit of a shout out to, even though they didn't make your top 5, that could have been in contention? We mentioned Michael Porter Jr., like I said, who I think has been doing this all season, has been this good all season. It's just he just hasn't had the minutes because Gary Harris and Will Barton have been at those wing spots, and now those 2 guys are injured. They're supposed to play tonight against the Clippers, but he's shown up, and he's shown up big time, really earning those minutes, and he's going to get a lot more play time, I think, in these playoff games. Yeah,
he definitely seems like someone who's come out, and this is kind of their showing out party since we have all these games going on. After the long break, obviously you have like the usual guys like Harden and Giannis, like they've all been very good in their own right too. If anything, like I think it'd be important to highlight almost in your direction, like you said, Michael Porter Jr., guys like Bol, even guys like Cam Johnson, like guys that are just have come out, and maybe those 3 guys aren't like necessarily putting up 30 a game or anything. They're showing that they have pretty important value to their teams. Like I know, the Cam Johnson pick was pretty, it was trashed on Twitter and social media by everybody when they took him.
Yeah.
Figured it was just another Suns bust, but he's proven that. Even Mikal Bridges on that team has been great. Bol is like this alien out there where it's like, what could he's getting rebounds, throwing full court passes, like hitting jumpers, taking like, off the dribble jumpers. So just guys like that have shown, that they can play pretty important roles for their teams. And maybe in Denver's case, where they're such a deep team, you need to stand out to carve out minutes. And so those guys like that have been, it's been impressive to watch. And it's also been fun because that these guys are also trying to carve out their own roles. This is their job. Like they're trying to carve out, trying to make a name for themselves and try to earn an actual big contract to solidify their place in the league. So it's cool to see that those guys, we've had a lot of those cases come out in the bubble so far.
Yeah, what are your sort of thoughts on guys like Giannis and Harden, who are obviously going to get the regular season recognition, but they've been good here in the bubble. I think Giannis. Do you want to get into Giannis's headbutt incident real quick? Actually, while we're on the top, that may have been the dumbest thing I've ever seen by an MVP caliber player. For him to risk being ejected for possibly the opening of the playoffs, doesn't matter who they're playing. For him to make that sort of decision as a leader of that team was an absolutely terrible move. I cannot believe that he actually went and headbutted Mo Wagner. That was ridiculous. That was just insane.
First of all, that's it. That's it right there. It's Mo Wagner. Why are you wasting your time on Mo Wagner? That guy was a stiff with the Lakers, and he's going to be a stiff with the Wizards. Like, but you're right. No, seriously, it's like you're this close to the playoffs. You have one more game left against Memphis coming up here, and you decide to risk it all by I get it. Like everyone gets frustrated. Things happen. Somebody says something about somebody's mom and everyone freaks out. Like that's how the trash talk goes. But you would never see a guy like LeBron, like Harden, like any of the guys, back then, they would never go and headbutt somebody.
No, like, it's ridiculous.
Like if it's like January and you want to like let off some steam if you're struggling, fine, go for it. Like I'm not going to say no, but you're in this close to the playoffs and, would it matter totally in the long run? No, because they're playing the Nets, right?
Yeah, he only got the 1 game ejection. We found that out like right before we went live that he's got the 1 game ejection, and that's it. It's not going to feed into.
I think if this was January, he would have gotten like 3 or 4 games probably. But Silver's not going to risk like probably the guy who's going to win the MVP. They're not going to suspend him for the playoffs. Yeah. But just a bonehead move. He's got to learn. You got to be better than that, and I hope we don't see that again.
Yeah, I guess we can attribute it. Hopefully, the only thing that we have to attribute it to is his youth, because he's still very young, 25 years old or whatever. And like, let's just hope that he does learn from this experience. He did come out and say that it was a dumb move, so let's just hope that it doesn't happen again. But yeah, I mean, Harden being the other guy, the sort of star that I think has actually shown up in the bubble more than a lot of these other sort of big name players, even more than Giannis in some of these games, because Giannis is playing limited minutes. But Harden, I mean, he slimmed down in the break as well, and I think it's shown he's been pretty good, honestly. And he's not playing a lot of defense still, but when he is asked to play defense, he does show up. And it might be in 1 minute bursts at the end of the game, but it's still effective. And Houston has been pretty solid in the bubble. Any thoughts on Harden?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's you kind of know at this point what you're going to get from Harden on both ends. But I feel like he's one thing I was kind of thinking about with his defense. Like you said, he's been asked to do some things, this year, and he's done them honestly better than I think we could have thought. He is, up there. I think he's leading the league in steals, right? That's what they said the other
so.
day.
Yeah, 1 Oh, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but
I forget if it was like the amount per game or if it was the total, but he's up there in steals. He's kind of almost playing like a mid 80s to late 80s like Magic role, where like they're just like do everything on offense and then just like get your hands in passing lanes on defense. Like you may get burned in your matchup once in a while, but like if you can just you think about it, for a guy like Harden to get his hands on the ball on a steal, and then all of a sudden he's running the fast break right away, and usually he's going to have an advantage off of a steal. That just puts Houston, I think, in such a good position. So he's taking advantage of like what he knows he can do, which you have to give him credit for. And like even today, like he had 45, 14, and 9 or whatever it was. Even though they couldn't get the win, but that was without Westbrook. So it seems like he's in pretty good form. They're going to have a tough first round matchup. I think right now they're most likely going to play OKC, which is going to be a fun matchup. You're playing your old team, you're playing your old teammate Chris Paul. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch. That's where I wish we had fans and it was in the arenas, because that'd be very interesting to have Westbrook come back to Oklahoma City, and Paul to Houston. But back to the main point is like Harden seems like he's in really good form, and we shouldn't through all this all bubble team, whether he makes it or not, he deserves the credit for playing some of his best basketball heading into the playoffs, which, as we know, is the most important thing.
Sure. MVP, is it, do we really need to get into it? It's Dame. It's Dame. I would, up until yesterday, I would have still made the case for Booker just because of how good Phoenix has been, but the 51 and the 61, I don't think you can dispute that.
No, you can't. And I was trying to find it earlier. Because I tweeted yesterday they talked about the Suns, being undefeated after they won their game. And I was like, they're playing phenomenal, whatever. And let me see if I can find it real quick. I think I said, it was probably like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And I said, Suns are killing it. Booker's probably gonna be the MVP of the bubble. And by like 10 o'clock, I was like, Dame's the MVP. Sorry, I'm gonna backtrack that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm speechless. I keep trying to just talk about how good he has been, especially in these last 2 games. And it is a lot attributed to the situation that he was put in. And then for him to sort of bounce back and play the way that he did, I think you're going to give a little bit of credit to that. And it might, that's sort of including a little bit of off court into it. But I think in this kind of situation that, there's going to be an asterisk on everything. There's going to be a bit of speculation and conversation about every decision that's made. And I think that you just can't really argue it. As good as Booker's been, and I kind of wish that Booker had gotten it, just because that would be like sort of a stamp on his resume that he hasn't quite had yet in his career. But Dame he just went ahead and just stole it from Dame.
And the thing with like Lillard too is like, again, obviously Booker's been great and stuff, but here's Lillard in the bubble. They have 1 more game left. He's 37, 9 assists, 4.5 rebounds. He's shooting 49% from the field, 41% from 3, killing it. 89 from the foul line, and they're 5-2, so they don't have quite the record that Phoenix does. But their only 2 losses have been to the Clippers and Boston by a combined 9 points. So it's not like they have struggled by any means here.
No,
and
not
he's
at all.
shown up. The last 2 games were arguably the most important that they needed to get in that pole position for the playing game. And Lillard obviously did more than show up. He owned it. And the fact that, I think Phoenix is kind of clicking all cylinders, which is what we've been talking about. Whereas we find out McCollum's he's playing with a lower back fracture, which is, not just a bum knee or something. That's pretty serious. Nurkic has been working his way back, and they have no wings. They don't have, they're starting. Mario Hezonja is getting a lot of minutes, and I'm sorry, he's not a good player.
No.
And so Dame is playing with a little bit less behind him than guys like Booker and Harden and stuff are. So I think it was at all close going into last night. Dame just took it. He took Booker's lunch money. That's really what it was. Like poor Booker was like in line, front of line, ready to get pizza at lunch, and Dame said, this is mine now.
That's exactly what you expect from Dame. That's exactly what I want from him. Like you said earlier, he's not going to go and be buddy with everybody on the court. He's going to show up. He's going to do his work, and I'm just so happy to see it on. Yeah, it's Dame time. It is Dame time. Let's close out this episode real quick with just we got a little bit of information, and I'm going to read this information sort of through these tweets and notes and whatnot. But we got some word from Woj this morning about a memo that the league sent out about guest protocol and guest guidelines coming into the bubble. Which is going to occur after the first round of the playoffs. So it's not going to happen now once these seeding games are over, but in about a week and a half to 2 weeks, you are going to start to see guests slowly flow into the bubble. I'm going to read the details. So 4 guests per player, which can be exceeded if there's children. Guests can travel on team charters following testing. Guests can attend events under the specific guest criteria. Family and quote unquote established longstanding personal friends quarantine in the team's market for 3 days and then in Orlando for 4, or go to Orlando and quarantine straight for 7 days. And then players are allowed 1 ticket for playoff games unless there's a child involved, which I guess there's a measurement under 32 inches, like it's a roller coaster or something. They're going to be measuring kids at the door who isn't eligible. And these are both quotes from Woj's tweets. Any individual that the player has not previously met in person or with whom the player has limited in-person interactions, for example, known by the player only through social media or an intermediary.
Instagram DM models. Woj wanted to say it, but the NBA wouldn't let him. But
he really did. And then the other one is current prospective staff or business relationships, including agents, trainers, therapists, personal chefs, tattoo artists. You just said it there. The whole entire conversation that was going on around these tweets coming out was everybody like, all right, which NBA player is getting gypped because they're not going to be able to get their Instagram model into the bubble. But I guess in all seriousness, this is obviously the right decision for the league to make, because you don't want any randos showing up. You don't want to risk anybody getting sick. The league announced today again that there are once again 0 positive tests, and you just don't want to mess that up. Right. And I'm even a little bit concerned with the 7-day quarantine period. I know that more often than not, the positive tests do come back in that range, but the players quarantined for 14 days plus in their markets and whatnot. And that sort of was the reason that we got no tests coming into Orlando. But yeah, I mean, it's understandable. There are some weird things like the child measurement thing. Like, are they going to really be measuring Chris Paul's son at the door? Like, is that actually what's going to, and like, how many of these players are tall guys? They're kids. Even if their kids are like 4 or 5 years old, they're going to be taller than the average kid. Right. That's a little concerning, I guess, the one guess thing, but I understand it.
Yeah, it's I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the NBA room with like Adam Silver and the entire like PR department. They were just like, how can we phrase no sexual hookups, no Instagram models? Like, how can we phrase this in a way that still shows that we're professional, but also gets the message across? Yeah. And they came up with, good and funny wording. My favorite part was Woj tweeted all of it out, and then he just goes, his last tweet was, "Those are the rules." Like, he was just like, "Here are the rules." I tweeted them. Don't break them. I am with you though, in all seriousness, about like me being iffy, because like you said, these guys have been quarantining. We've been perfect. Like, the bubble's been great, save for 2 people who accidentally left. We haven't had any positive tests. They follow protocols, so far as well as we could have imagined. And it's like, we're so close. I know it seems like October is far away, but like, we're going to be there before we know it. And so I feel like we could have gone the rest of the time without any outside visitors. I do get like the mental and emotional side of it, of like having, say, like your wife or like your kid or somebody come down. Like, these guys are, making a sacrifice being away from home. Sure. With no in-person contact, but there is a risk with it. So I hope that they just continue to be as vigilant and as on top of the game as they have been with the testing and everything. And hopefully that just, I like those tweets that, hey, we've tested again, 0 positive tests. Like, the last thing you want to see is like, so-and-so is out, or, this team has 4 people that they're asymptomatic, but they tested positive, so they have to sit like 3 starters. Like, it would put such a damper on what's been a great overall product in the bubble. And yeah, Kendall Jenner, Kylie Jenner, stay out. Don't come here. I saw Booker the other day on Instagram. Stay away. You're not allowed. You guys haven't met. You only Instagrammed. You can't come in.
It's not allowed. I'm looking at the comments. It's just like Ashmere said, like something about side women stay home. 2020 is almost over. Or something. It's gone now. But and then she said something like sitting next to the two girls sitting next to each other, pointing at each other like OMG invited you. Like I am kind of like picturing this. I think it's kind of inappropriate. If I'm being completely honest with you for us to be talking about this, but like I think a lot of us as basketball fans are just sort of anticipating something crazy like this to happen, and it's funny that Adam Silver,
it'll be the Lakers too. It'll be like 2:30 in the morning. Woj will be like, "Hey, Deion Waiters and J.R. Smith got busted with a groupie, whatever." That's what I was trying to figure out. I was like, who is it gonna be? Who's gonna be the one that messes this up for everybody? And I don't want to even pin that on anybody right now. J.R. Smith opens at -200.
Honestly, I'm honestly, J.R. Smith got busted the first night of the bubble because in the league had to reprimand him because he was showing too much of his room or whatever. And like, God.
Oh, Harden too. Harden loves his extracurricular activities. Something that Harden is a fan of.
Isn't that the rumor as to why he was late to the bubble? That's why he had COVID before he showed it.
100% did that. Same thing with Kawhi. Kawhi likes to hang out at certain joints around town as well. So we'll see what happens. I'm trying to be as politically correct as possible. Because those girls are working hard to get through college, but we'll see. I'm done. That's my last one.
No comment. All right, I think this has gone off the rails. I was just gonna say I think it's funny that Adam Silver. We knew it was gonna happen. We knew he was gonna have to put the hammer down, but like a strict parent is coming in there and is like, no bad actions. Like behave yourselves. Like we're giving you the flexibility.
Don't screw it up. Yeah, they're giving him a leash. Don't choke yourself with the leash. So we're pretty much done with that. I guess Friday we'll be doing. Are we going to be doing the East preview?
Yeah, I think the Eastern Conference will be more or less set. If anything looks sort of up in the air, we will change. But that is what you guys can expect from us on Monday is Eastern Conference playoff previews plus probably a play-in game preview as well. Mm-hmm. And then Monday we'll get into the Western Conference playoffs. But that'll bring us to an end for this roller coaster of an episode. You can find us at our social medias down there, and also be sure to follow Nuts and Bolts Sports on our website as well as on all social media platforms. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll be back on Friday.